Roll20 caught up to Team Freedom and Gale eSports last weekend, but now it's time for those teams to shine as they both have 2 matches this weekend, one today, and they play each other on Sunday. Welcome back to HGC North America. Dread, we've got a ton of awesome matches lined up this weekend, but that match between Gale and Freedom's gotta be the hype match of the weekend.
There is a lot on the line for Team Freedom, and performing in that series, it could be the thing that determines our 3rd seed, and more importantly, you know, the kind of landscape that we're going to overcome in our entire time going through the playoffs later out through the series. So Team Freedom, it's a big weekend for them, and we'll see if they have what it takes.
Speaking of the playoffs, everyone in the standings has been crunching the numbers, trying to figure out what they need to do to qualify for our HGC finals at BlizzCon. So far, Gale eSports is in the lead to do so. Yes, they have the same number of wins as Roll20, but they've also played 2 matches less. And in fact, there's a slim chance that Gale could qualify as early as this weekend, but Dread, it's fairly slim.
It's a weird situation. Gale eSports need to find themselves successful, and then more importantly, Superstars has to win the 2 games that they play this weekend. Namely so because they end up taking out Team Freedom, which we know would secure the slot there for Gale eSports. So ultimately, there is only one condition where Gale gets it, and it's unlikely, considering that we know Superstars has to take on Team Freedom today.
Not only Team Freedom today, but Tempo Storm on Sunday. So they would need to win both of those series. Not likely to be able to get those, but we don't know. We don't really know at all what Superstars will look like this weekend since they're coming back in with Stray.
That is a good point. You know, at this point, it's just kind of like, well, is Superstar suddenly going to look new and improved, and we get a different version of them that we have not seen yet? I'm going to say I doubt it, just because this team has been around for so very long, but I'm ready to be surprised.
Well, as far as the schedule for today, if you missed it in Europe, guys, I think I'm a tricked eSport fan. They made me a fan in their match versus Team Liquid. I was wowed by the plays they were making. I thought Alex the Pro G played fantastically. Nappa was making plays, all of them. Maka with his freaking Dragon Blades on Towers of Doom. Good night. And they defeated Team Liquid, so they keep their hopes alive for playoffs, and so too do Team Expert. But we today are talking about our 2 matches for North America. We get to see how Gale and Freedom are looking before they're matched against each other on Sunday. And it also gives Spacestation a chance to try to position better for themselves in playoffs.
Yeah, it's very important for Spacestation Gaming to get anything they can get. But as we said, not only for the Gale circumstance, but more importantly for themselves. Superstars needs any win they can get today. They need absolutely everything if they are going to remain outside of that Crucible range here. After some of the events that we've seen throughout Part 2, Phase 2, it's now a do-or-die situation for the members of Superstars.
That it is. They are hopeful that they can overtake LagForce again. But Spacestation, they're still hanging in there for playoffs too. And as always, we talk to both of the teams for this match and get their thoughts on the matchup. So let's hear them as we get excited for it.
There is a bit of added pressure that comes with being first place. Before, at the beginning of the season, you know, we weren't really sure where we'd end up. We knew we'd be in the top 3 at least, but now that we're, you know, pretty comfortable in that first place seed, the pressure definitely builds up, and I feel like each series holds a little bit more weight. It's going to feel really good when the season's over if we can just maintain that 1 loss for the entire split. I think Spacestation Gaming is going to come out really hot this series. They're recently sponsored, and they just went through a boot camp as a full team. So I think they're going to be coming out looking for this win, and we got to make sure to stay on our toes so we don't let them have it.
I'm excited to play Gale again. I feel like the last set we had against them, we really, it was ours to win. We threw it away with a few big mistakes at the end of Game 5. And I feel like they've improved a lot as a team since then, and I feel like we've also improved. So I'm really excited to see how we stack up against them right now, seeing as how they've had so much success in the league. I feel like we can definitely beat them, but really coming out of it, I just want to see if we can continue growing as a team. That's the main fact that I want to push forward with our team, is we just want to grow and become the best possible team that we can. For us, we don't pay too much attention to the standings. It is important to get good seeding, but really we just want to give ourselves the best chance to make it through playoffs. So the main goal is to just improve every week and get better and just be ready for when that time comes to just make the run through the gauntlet.
Casanova and the members of Spacestation have put all their hopes on the line now for playoffs for HGC Finals. And we know that they are fairly far down in the standings. It's likely that they won't be in the very last place, but the further you are down in the standings, the harder playoffs become for you as a team.
They get harder in the fact that you just have to take out another opponent, which, I mean, it's a bold strategy, but it is technically one with the formatting that we have at HGC, one that you can get away with. It's just that no team has really been as so confident as to just be like, that is the goal. We're going to wait for the playoffs, and that's where we're going to be able to step it up. Now, granted, you know, Spacestation, they waited a while before getting that mentality, and it's going to be interesting to see if it's one that pays off for them. I am skeptical hearing about it, but, you know, again, it's one of those, I'm ready to see the past kind of not have the same outcome.
And King Caffeine mentioned how there is a little bit more pressure on them as a team because they're in the first place position currently in standings. And yeah, Roll20 has caught up with them, but Gale Force has slowly been garnering this new persona of the most consistent team in North America, which has for the longest time been Tempo Storm. Maybe not necessarily as you look at offline events, but online here, it's always been Tempo Storm. And now to hear that last week from Cothenluck that they are the most consistent team and that they even Tempo felt like the underdogs versus Gale Force was very interesting to me to hear. But let's get into the battlegrounds and then we can talk more about the strategy that Gale Force will be bringing in versus Spacestation. It's Spacestation's pick for Battleground. They choose Infernal Shrines. We're going to have bans on Sky Temple, so Gale Force changing up again what they want to ban now that they're not beholden to their Dragonshire ban, and then a standard Cursed Hollow ban for Spacestation. That is actually different for Spacestation too. They generally like Cursed Hollow, so both of them changing it.
Yeah, that's a huge adjustment. Not being willing to go to Cursed Hollow for the members of Spacestation Gaming, that's been their go-to map since the beginning of Equinox implementation onto this roster, so that has got to be phase number 2. So there is already both these teams showing the adjustments, but more importantly, Spacestation Gaming here, as they have an entire mountain to climb labeled Gale Force eSports. Draft number 1 about to kick off.
So Dread, the biggest thing that I want to get across is that for Spacestation, there's no battleground advantage for them over Gale Force eSports. Every battleground that Spacestation generally favors, Gale Force has either the same record on that battleground or even better. Infernal Shrines is one of those. We're looking at a 4-1 record for Gale Force eSports so far on Infernal Shrines, and then Infernal Shrines is 6-2 for Spacestation, so similar. But the fact remains, things like Braxis Holdout, things like Battlefield of Eternity. Battlefield is one that Spacestation have been picking for a while, and they do not have a good record on it, whereas Gale Force still maintain a good record on that battleground. So there's going to be no place where we look at these drafts and say, Spacestation has a clean victory here. It's going to come down to the drafts themselves. Now, do you think we're going to see Gale Force try to hide any strategies given that they play Freedom later on?
It feels like Gale Force would have to, right? Unless Spacestation Gaming really forces you to show anything whatsoever, and that's got to be after a loss. So at this point in time, Gale Force eSports, until Spacestation gets even a win, I am no concern on unveiling any of my strategies that I've been working on as of late, because I know that, again, bigger names, bigger opponents lay down the line here at HGC North America. Medivh creeping his way through those ban phases for every single team in North America, even Spacestation, as he is going to be removed in a first pick Tassadar for Gale Force eSports.
Greymane ban from Gale Force. Spacestation has been favoring that hero a lot. They did show some change-ups, some adjustments in their last match, but it's still a priority hero for them because they have so many different Greymane players, and it stays very flexible of a pick for them. Rhaegar has been another favorite for them, and for both of them on Infernal Shrines and for Dragonshire, they've been liking Lunara. So I wonder if we'll see a higher Lunara or if maybe that will fall off completely for both of these teams since we've had a week for teams to continue to adjust to the new meta.
We're going to find out here. Nobody's committed to anything here. Just with the Tassadar picked up, I'm surprised Spacestation is taking this amount of time for the very first game. Again, this is their map pick. The Tassadar is not that surprising. The Greymane ban, maybe, but again, you had a lot of time with your response onto the side of the Medivh ban. All of this feels like, again, Spacestation Gaming goes in with a game plan, but it gets turned on its head, or at least they're second-guessing it far quicker than maybe you would traditionally assume, but eventually we do come to conclusion. Vala and ETC are the selection.
Vala and ETC. We've been seeing quite a bit of Vala, even still with the Ariel changes. Up next, 2 picks for Gale Force. I'm wondering what they want to add with that Tassadar. There's no Vala pairing there. There's still a possible Lunara. But is it absolutely necessary that they get something like that? Is it a possibility that Task Tracer shows up here?
I mean, it is maybe a small choice. It's a chance just because Tassadar Tracer, the lethalness and what they provide around the map is going to be, I mean, it's always amazing, but it doesn't accent Infernal Shrine's two biggest points are either split pushing or the actual shrine itself, and outside of just getting that one kill and pushing the members of Spacestation Gaming away, it doesn't have the same threat level it does on other maps like that of Battlefield of Eternity. So I'm going to say unlikely, but not out of the realm of possibility. Instead, that hat target, or not the hat target, excuse me, the shielding target is going to be a Sonya here for Gale Force Esports, and pairing it there with a nice Uther.
Pretty cool to see Gale Force bring in Sonya, but it's interesting that they're the ones to draft Sonya out of the two teams here, because Spacestation had so much love for Sonya on Infernal Shrines 2 in part 1 of this phase. Still a warrior necessary for Gale Force Esports. Spacestation trying to limit the pool of that. They already have their own primary warrior for Casanova, and it is the high ETC that we saw adjusted for Spacestation in their last series versus Tempo.
I wouldn't be surprised if that is a trend all of North America starts picking up a little bit more. ETC, much like the climb of Medivh that we have talked about for a long while, that one's rather slow, and we expect it to be a long, slowly consuming thing, but the ETC, he is going to be here to stay for a while, and North America seems to be a little bit behind on the hype train behind ETC, but it seems like we are, in fact, at least recognizing the power level of it faster than I expected us to.
Both of these teams have put a lot of focus in global picks. It feels like it's been less for Gale Force than what we know from them before, but they still are doing things like their Dahaka, Abathur even on certain battlegrounds. But Spacestation has almost always preferred to have either Dahaka or Falstad, as making sure that they have Jason as a side-soaking hero who can come in at the drop of a hat if necessary.
What about a drop of a stage dive? Is that an option, you know?
Could be an option, but I really do believe that Casanova, especially because it's Infernal Shrines and you have all of those choke points, like think about the middle shrine and how you have to retreat through the Khazra area, I think that he'll be wanting to stick with making sure that he can mosh pit and try to lock down a lot of members of the team.
I have been, you know, surprised with the quantity of stage dive that we have seen with the climb of ETC back in the meta. Granted, and NA, it's been a more focus, about 75% of the time mosh pit, but we've also had significantly less ETC than all the other aspects of the world, and they've still been pretty comfortable going into the stage dive here and there. So it's not, you know, I honestly, I felt like mosh pit was going to be the go-to forever, but the fact that stage dive is here and multiple regions are trending towards it, I feel like, you know, there's something I'm missing out on into the value that can provide into that, you know, Dahaka matchups and thing in later stages of the game, because we know, I mean, globals are essentially, since the nerf mount, or mount nerf, oh man, not the nerf mount, the mount nerf has been essentially core to all compositions in competitive heroes. Even, look at this, Abathur here, to be another one.
Abathur and Malthael, we've seen a couple of Abathur Malthael plays, one even from Gale Force versus Tempo Storm, and what a double Malthael can do. You can't go over top of each other's Reaper's Mark, but you can utilize each other's Reaper's Mark to get into a better positioning.
The first thing when we saw Malthael being released, or I saw Malthael being released, the first thing I went in and tested was like, I have to see how this affects Abathur's passive, or how Abathur affects his passive, because if this works directly and you're able to scale with the best, I was like, this is the greatest thing in the world. Sadly, you know, you just get more sustain, which it is still really useful, but let's be real here, true damage for as much damage, and max health would just be unreal amount of pressure for Gale Force to deal with. But that Sonya, she's got two supports behind it. The Malthael isn't going to be too scary. A lot of Shrine control with their composition so far, mainly between that Sonya and that Tassadar. It's about the other aspects of the map. A Sylve being picked up here behind a Muradin.
I heard tales
of the
about
wild
this,
Sylvanas,
but I am surprised that we're seeing Gale Force be willing to play this and bring this out. We had just mentioned that we guess this Gale Force would largely be wanting to hide any potential strategies because they have an important match versus Team Freedom later on this weekend. Spacestation still get their Rhaegar, but that is a far lesser prioritized Rhaegar than they have been so far, been drafting him earlier on in the first 2 weeks of play. But we did start to see that trend of swapping ETC for Rhaegar later on.
And when we do see the Sylvanas come out here for GFE, at least Space Station Gaming has themselves a cleanse support. The first thing you've got to be considering when she gets busted out, is this going to be the mind control pick? Is this now more, you know, team fight oriented through that crowd control and then abusing your passive whenever you get it, or in fact are you playing a more traditional Sylve game? We've got ourselves a standard Sylve game, but it's still going to provide a lot of pressure, and Spacestation has to find a way to be able to deal with that passive.
And even though Rhaegar has a cleanse to deal with mind control, he still can have a lot of trouble if he gets hit by Wailing Arrow while the rest of the team is trying to bring somebody down. Wailing would also help with the potential mosh pit factor that we know is a possibility, but if we see Malthael go into fights and he needs that ancestral healing and all of a sudden a Wailing Arrow comes out and just stops Rhaegar at a perfect time, should be easy pickings for Gale Force to try to take out that Malthael.
And also if you ever have the secret strategy of like, well, what if you just use mind control to be able to rid of the Malthael? You know, he dives in with Tormented Souls, you're going to rid of him the other way. Inevitable End has an immediate cast time and mind control does not. So if any time if Gale Force was to, you know, bring out the mind control and you hear that weird audio cue, I don't need the and when that starts, just go ahead and pop it. It completely wastes the entire channel time. The cooldown doesn't even go off immediately, and Inevitable End, Malthael is still ripping apart Tormented Souls. And so what I'm trying to say here is that that is not a counter option. A lot of people at home, I feel like, you're like, oh, you know, what if that could work? It doesn't. The Malthael wins that trade. It's not even worth building into the talent with the idea of maybe it's worth consuming the 13 and going Inevitable End. So Gale Force, though it's an old, wild, and slightly different strategy here, they are the favorite team, and so I feel like I'm still going to, you know, give them the upper hand. But I mean, let's be real here. Sylve struggles in team fights, and that's something Spacestation's got to look to abuse.
Yeah, Gale Force is the one, not Spacestation, bringing in the pocket picks as we would have expected from Spacestation. Let's see how it works out for Gale Force in game number 1 on Infernal Shrines.
Game 1. In the blue is Spacestation Gaming, where we have Tiger JK on the Rhaegar. Jason's playing the Malthael. Casanova on ETC. We have Vala played by Equinox, and Talking Trees on the Abathur.
And meanwhile, Gale Force eSports at the top of the North American standings. We've got Fan playing Sylvanas. Up next, Muradin, played by King Caffeine. Tassadar, played by K1 Pro. Akaface will be playing Uther. And finally, Michael Udall playing Sonya.
So now we've got to be going into what type of strategy and playstyle here for the members of Gale Force eSports. What was the goal with the Sylve? Because yes, we did touch upon the Sylvanas being picked up, but maybe not kind of the intent with it here. This is to ensure that the shrines that they do end up picking up are far more effective and are not going to be the, you know, we look at Punisher 1, we say that is a front wall. Punisher 2, you can assume is going to be a 4. And 3, then it's all situational from that point on. Sylve just goes, first one is a fort. The next one is going to be a key front wall. Or if it's not the fort directly where the Punisher is sieging, you just split push elsewhere. You abuse, you know, the rest of the team siege and just make sure you open up the map as fast as possible, and it becomes really difficult to deal with. And that Sylve, or excuse me, the Sonya and the Tassadar synergy high in the draft, and then the late Sonya or Sylve makes that possible because now they have double shrine control.
Yes.
They know they can get the shrine. They can skirmish around the shrine, and then Sylve is, you know, the sweet cherry on top that is going to be the Punisher sieging with Gale Force.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to highlight is the Sylvanas doesn't have to necessarily be on the shrine. She can even be trying to take down the front wall ahead of the Punisher with some other members to protect her because Sonya is so good and so effective on the shrine. But what really scares me is the composition that it's against.
Yeah.
We're against an Abathur Malthael composition. This is not fight early on a type of composition. This, to me, would say, oh, we're just going to try to siege down structures. We've got Vala. We're even building into Hungering Arrow build, so maybe we can get some mercenary camps with that. That changes a lot of what the plan might have been now for Spacestation because they have to deal with that Sylvanas up front. We're ready to get back into the game. All players ready to go, so let's get to it.
I think you highlighted it, and we could talk about it for, I feel like, the rest of this game. There are a lot of clever things done by Gale Force by moving into that Sylvanas after the Abathur selection here for the members of Spacestation Gaming. And even though Sylvanas is considered the risky, you know, wild pick here, I genuinely feel as if it is going to be a game where Spacestation Gaming is constantly trying to figure out how do we not lose? How do we slow down the threat in the wake that Gale Force is leaving behind them?
Yeah, the win train possibility for Gale Force, especially because since we're on Infernal Shrine and Cursed Hollow is not an option because Spacestation didn't feel like it was a comfortable pick for them anymore, it feels like they are quite limited in what battlegrounds are Spacestations in favor to win, and this would be one of them. It's not a guaranteed one. because Gale Force do so well on this Battleground 2, but it's still one where Spacestation have been able to find success.
And we do see a little bit of adjustments for the Abathur there at level 1, maybe with an attempt to deal with this. It's going into the focus on his shielding with regenerative microbes. It's not uncommon. Abathur has a couple of 1 through 7s that you see, and all of them dependent on his comp, his opponent's comp, and the map overall. Just the TLDR here has got to be Spacestation. They're mixing things up, and at least they're going to have more sustain for those long team fights. It's just more of whether or not they get to this even footing in those later team fights, because this Sylve comp should apply the pressure far before that 10 window is there.
Yeah, I wonder if we'll still see a sustained Carapace to go along with that at 4. How far down the Carapace build do we see? For a while, Abathur was building all the way up into level 7 because of how things were interacting with networked Carapace at level 7, but generally that build has not been played as much, definitely not in North America. When we do occasionally see it, it'd be from like Team Liquid from Europe. But we've got the first shrine underway, and Gale Force is leading the charge in Skeletal Defenders.
They are leading the charge, but you do not want them to get this Punisher and see what Fan can do there with his passive. Sonya is going to be focusing up towards the top lane, so giving up a couple here. Spacestation Gaming should be able to pull ahead quite effectively, but they're unable to do so. Fan throwing out a couple of daggers, and it's just not enough pressure onto those Skeletal Defenders. Now Power Slide coming in, knockback there onto Fan. Spacestation Gaming wants it, they get it. They find themselves the very first blood, and now it's about who gets this Punisher. Stormbolt goes in on to Equinox, but brilliant here. The heal from Tiger keeps him alive.
The nice thing for Spacestation is that they are drawing this fight out, keeping right up with Gale Force eSports and Skeletal Defenders, which is good for their Abathur. And getting the kill sets them ahead in experience, but can they use that to pick up the first Punisher of the game and stop the Sylvanas pressure along with it? It's 30-32. Gale Force has been pushed all the way back. Just now, Fan jumping back into the rest of the team. Casanova's been caught. Goes off for a power slide.
He's got no health remaining. He ends up dying. The members of Spacestation, though, they just finished that Punisher. It's got a leap. Akaface is going to be the focus if they can reveal. He just got out of range. K1 Pro's fine. There's the dimensional shift. Now the pressure here towards the front wall. Spacestation is going to be at least this very front, and I don't think they can get much after. But the biggest thing is an Abathur composition not failing in the early game to a Sylve composition. My goodness, Spacestation making an argument for themselves here in Game 1 against Gale Force.
And that leap, because Dimensional Shift had to be used, didn't quite get the Punisher over the wall, so it gives a little bit extra damage on the fort than otherwise you might have seen before Spacestation had to disengage. Gale Force get back out in the lanes as quickly as they can. They use that Sylvanas at the Punisher defense to make sure that they still have Tassadar and Sonya in the lanes. So they're keeping up with experience. But as you said, Dread, not losing the fort, not losing a ton of experience early on was pivotal for Spacestation. It all came down to that singular kill on the Shrine.
The singular kill on the Shrine. One thing we do need to look at, though, with talking about those shrines and the kills focusing onto it, is Fan at level 4 moving into the Lost Soul. That is going to reduce the cooldown of Shadow Dagger by 1.25 seconds for every hero it hits. Around those shrines, it is going to be almost without a doubt 4 people being hit. Just dagger after dagger, and that is poke after poke after poke. Suddenly, now with this being online for all of the Shrine, the entirety of the Shrine, unlike the very first one, I think that Gale Force will have a, a brighter outcome over the first part of the Shrine, and that is something Spacestation needs to be concerned about. I'm at the point where I feel like Spacestation might even need to kind of cut their losses. Things have been going unrealistically good for them, considering the composition strengths and weaknesses of both sides here. Maybe forfeiting this second Shrine phase and pushing, split pushing, just take out a front wall, maybe a feat, and go even, or fort even here with Gale Force. I'd take out the feat. I don't know why you'd be doing that.
That would have happened if King Caffeine could have landed that Stormbolt on Equinox, but thankfully dodged it, so the feet were still fast in Hot Pursuit. Even though we don't have Hot Pursuit, so not quite as fast as they could have been.
It makes me a little bit sad that we decided to take that talent and put it at the beginning, because, I mean, it's pretty apparent. You've heard me say, I like Hot Pursuit. You're in Hot Pursuit, and it's just, nope, can't say it now because Vala didn't end up taking the talent. Why do our talent namers have to be so clever, Gilly? I'm telling you, it is ruining the world of commentary.
They are so good, though. Lieutenant Morales.
They're so good, it's bad.
They're some of the best.
It's just... Save some for the rest of us, the less clever and, witted as those brilliant writers we have at Blizzard.
I think that's probably why they have those jobs that they have.
That's probably true. Fan under a lot of pressure. Stormbolt going to go ahead and whip there for King Caffeine. Equinox did end up using the Vault, though, so that's a cooldown they might want to abuse. And now it's all about these Punishers. Spacestation, they are going to zone right on off. Gale Force clearing out the minion wave. Once that's rid of, expect them to move up and get more aggressive.
So, Jed, you talked about Lost Soul and the cooldown reduction from Shadow Dagger, and because we don't have a lot of Sylvanas play here in North America, the big deal is comboing that with Cold Embrace, giving vulnerability at 16 to the primary target. And with the 16 power spike they get with Benediction too, there'll be a lot more lockdown. And speaking of lockdown, Cleanse is used. Casanova gets back. Tiger JK saves him, and he's out of there.
Yeah, he barely made it out of there. But we've got to be considering the fact that this is now a lot of skeletal defenders picked up for for Gale Force. Spacestation want to stop this. They're trying to force this before the 40 is met. Mike's in a bad spot. He uses the spear. He's going to get power slid. That interrupts the spin. Dwarf toss away for King Caffeine, and the members of GFE are alive. They're even in experience and the race to 10. It's about the Punisher and these defenders. Casanova.
Mike is so low. Equinox goes in, confirms the kill, taking out Sonya and getting Spacestation oh so close to heroic abilities. No Sonya
Got him.
Means a lot less Shrine control. Gale Force back away as the heroic abilities are achieved by Spacestation. Once again, Spacestation, exactly when they need to get a kill, when they have to force Gale Force back, they are able to do it, and this is a second Punisher controlled by Spacestation.
Spacestation Gaming here, the fact that they have gotten both those Punishers, and they're winning in structures. Gale Force eSports is yet to set a 5-man up with the Sylvanas disabling a structure, and that is, I mean, legitimately the only reason you pick Sylvanas, and Spacestation is punishing them left and right. They are doing everything, but by no means is this enough. This is still an Abathur composition. Sylvanas can still win the video game at almost any point in time. They just cannot let up. They cannot overextend here at this peep. Otherwise, Gale Force may look to get that punishment there.
Love how Spacestation got aggressive right at the outset of everyone from Gale Force getting ready to defend and getting heroic abilities. Because Gale Force spread out, soaked up different lanes, it allowed the Punisher to do more. They pushed on past the Punisher while it finished off the fort and the structures around that, and that let them get a tower in front of Keep. Spacestation now have a full level lead. This is a great position as they've taken out 2 forts to allow Abathur to start doing a lot more split pushing in the Punisher phases to come.
Only making that Abathur pick that we were talking about, the early game being risky. It's now, the late game is better, but it's great now. Those double force that you were just talking about is huge. Spacestation looking to flank the beautiful dimensional shift. A 2-man mosh pit. Pre-cleanse is used. Wailing Arrow dropped. Tormented Souls is is already gone through, but nobody's died. A dwarf toss away.
Trace is still chasing down Fan, has the mark on it. But as soon as they deal with this clone, then maybe they can get back in. Self-Divine Shield, Akape's way far out in front. He will be taken out. It gives some ghost healing, but with Sylvanas also dropping, getting taken out again at the beginning of a fight, Gale Force once again find themselves retreating, and the lone fort they have left will be brought down.
This is just absolutely unreal. Spacestation Gaming is doing everything they need to here, and Gale Force, I mean, I know that they're failing to put maybe a lot of pressure onto the members of Spacestation, but I still cannot say it enough. Spacestation is doing all the things necessary in this game. Now a full 2 levels ahead, or at least a level and a half. They get to paint the map blue. They got that 13 talent here. It's just, as long as Spacestation Gaming keeps this offensive aggression success they've displayed for the first 9 minutes and 45 seconds up past the 16 talent tier, I think they've got this game.
I thought Spacestation was going to get a lot more kills in that fight too, but they got the 2 necessary, and it came down to the positioning. Gale Force obviously realizing that they needed to fight, were willing to step further out, try to invade one of the camps. But the 2-man mosh pit and then the Wailing Arrow hitting back behind, trying to at least limit the amount of damage that can be done to the people within the mosh pit. But still, Sylvanas was very far forward, got chased all the way back. You had Tormented Souls to throw one set of Gale Force up, and then the clone of Malthael to continue the chase on top of Sylvanas and eventually get that kill. Allowed them to get the 2 kills. It didn't let Gale Force find any method of coming back into the game. There's a whole lot of mercenary camps that had to be dealt with by Gale Force, which then gives even further for Spacestation to get this next shrine and continually not allowing Gale Force to get a shrine with their Sylvanas.
Yeah, and they are not even getting a fort or really just even a front wall. I mean, to be honest, Gilly, Gale Force eSports, for picking a Sylvanas composition into an Abathur and being the #1 seed in North America, they haven't done anything with their Sylvanas. Like, almost near nothing with her so far. And it's rather concerning how little they're doing. It's not, I mean, at this point in time, it's now, what can they make happen on the defense here? The sidewall's already been taken out for Spacestation. They're getting aggressive. They want to make it happen. Akaface trying to move up, but it's going to be Calf, the one dwarf tossing in. Mike using that spin, the whirlwind healing away. Power slide, Casanova not going to get the pre-cleanse. Divine Shield used onto Fan, but he's okay.
Yeah, the Punisher making quick work of an Uther, but everyone from Gale Force stays alive and they keep the keep alive. Now they've got the Force Wall, Talking Trees, making everybody from Gale Force focusing him down, and King Caffeine continuing to elude Jason and Equinox chasing him down. Avatar is already gone. Tiger JK running up. Everybody's starting to collapse in this location of King Caffeine. He doesn't have a lot of resources, but if they could somehow turn this fight, this would be the place for Gale Force to try to get back into this game.
Akaface keeps the rest of the team alive, and the members of Gale Force eSports here are now looking to get offensive. Power slide is not going to be up. That is a beautiful Storm Bolt and CC Chain. Gale Force find themselves a cow. But what did we just witness, Gilly? That was all over the place. Gale Force, for the first time, they're making something happen here with Fan and the Sylvanas, but how... what did I win? Can you break it down here? Because I'm a little lost over the past couple of minutes.
Are you talking about that fight or this game in general?
The chase, the game, everything about it.
All right, well, you said that Sylvanas has not been able to be useful to Gale Force eSports, but we have to remember that in the first 2 shrines of the game, Gale Force were neck and neck or ahead in Skeletal Defenders, and then somebody was too far out and Spacestation punished. They punished beautifully the first time they took out Sylvanas, the second time they took out Sonya. These are 2 key members. Sonya for being able to control the shrines, Sylvanas obviously to push along with it, and then getting those shrines, it's like Gale Force is stymied. They have no idea what happened because everything about them was an early game comp and they're not winning the early game. So now it's like, all right, we know we have this Sylvanas who is supposed to win the early game. So what do we do?
So now that
now
the
we gotta
game,
make adjustments.
it was like, well, it was like every part of this checklist was really, if we get the first one, the second one comes. And it's like, well, we're sitting as question mark number 2 here, but nobody checked off the first one.
Yeah.
Akaface and friends, they make it behind the wall. You know, brilliant transition downward from Spacestation to get the invade on this camp, trying to abuse their 16 talent tiers. We're 7 seconds away from the 3rd shrine and phase of this game. Gale Force will be able to get the 16. It's going to take them a hot minute here, as you see them focusing through mid and up on top, but they will get it. It's when do they decide to respond to Spacestation, and does Spacestation even care? Because they have been so successful, even in team fighting, because of this Sylph, that I just don't know if, you know, Gale Force didn't win the early game hard enough. I just feel like it's too late.
But 16 is the point that Gale Force needed to get to for fights. But
the
look at the mosh!
Everything here for Spacestation Gaming has been flawless. 2 members of Gale Force are already down. The knockback there from Casanova. Equinox is going to be in the chase here. They find themselves King Caffeine. Mike's going to be going down. Gilly, what a freaking ridiculous play from Spacestation Gaming. Equinox went out a bit too far, but then everybody was there to make sure they had his back, and they may now have the game.
It turns out when you have 2 circles of death and they're on top of each other, that Venn diagram you cannot deal with. Having that mosh pit that good and Tormented Souls on top of it, you have the double mouth ale. Spacestation Gaming did exactly what they needed to. They got the exact kills necessary, and they did what they had been promising to do, which is get an early lead and keep it. Not let it go, not allow Gale Force to find the 16
fights. But it's not over yet. It's a mouth ale on core, 50%. It's not done.
Uh-oh.
40, 30, Tiger's the focus. That's just mouth ale. Again, that's no damage. The mule goes down.
It draws some of the fire of the core. We've still got Casanova.
Shielding.
We've just got Casanova.
9, 7. No, they can't do it.
Let's remember, though.
Okay. But you're forgetting the
There's
Sylph.
3 forts
You're
up.
forgetting the
I
Sylph.
know.
They don't care about the
I
forts.
know.
They'll move past the forts, their sidewall. They'll disable the keep, and they'll win the game. This is the beauty of Sylph. Is she can win every time you fail a game. She can just win it. Unlike any character in Heroes of the Storm other than Zeratul and Medivh, can they do this? They're playing it slow, and they aren't going for the keep, which means that they're going for the longer, you know, trying to not end the game in 1 shot, 1 kill.
They've got 7% on their core.
Yeah, Gilly, this is not necessarily the direction I would be going with this one, and I'm just going to go ahead and sit here with a thinking emoji face and waiting to see what is the decision-making for Gale Force, because that 7% core, I mean, Spacestation can just all in. at almost any point in this time. But once they get the 20s, it's not like this can end the game itself. They're really relying on the Sylvanas. But again, Space Station Gaming can kind of just go, what if we don't go bottom? What if we just look towards your core?
They're setting up. They've got Vala as one of the targets.
She's made it.
Tiger JK's there too. There's too many off map.
No.
They're gonna get
yeah, they know. Wait. But see, they'll wait until they draw aggro. See, these two just hate. No, they showed so early.
Here we
no,
go.
They're going for it.
Here
The
we
clone.
go.
7%.
All right, and the shield. Don't forget the shield's there too.
Stop Fan from getting back. Cap.
They've got the healing ward.
Storm.
Trying to keep them healed. They're
Shield's
almost
gone.
to the shields. 6%,
They did it.
3%. There they do.
Space
They got it.
Station. They win game 1. They take it here over Gale Force eSports. It was a roller coaster of emotions from beginning to end, but here we are, and Space Station standing on top.
Sylvanas
Yeah,
versus Abathur.
Is a really good pick, and that was not a very good case for it. Honestly, there seems to be a major communication issue there from Gale Force eSports. I have never seen a comp with such a straightforward game plan and just be neglected as heavy as that one almost ever. What is
the bigger problem? That they lost people, or that they immediately backed off as soon as they lost people with those first 2 shrines?
Well, think about the first couple of minutes of the game, even, right? The first thing you would assume, front wall's dead. That didn't happen. It was a 2-1-2 laning decision, which is one of the slowest advantages. You do that when you're losing laning phase, not when you're winning the laning phase. It was like they thought they had won it so hard they could break the laning situation into a 2-1-2, still win it so hard, and then just be like 3 levels ahead pre-10 or something. The direction it went to, it just never once did you see, oh, a structure. They lost somebody, Sylva's pressuring bottom, right? There was no moment where there was a sit in siege and there was a Sylv on their team. Like that, there should be twice, 2, 3, 10-fold as many of those opportunities with that type of composition.
Yeah.
And more importantly, into an Abathur composition who is absolutely terrible levels 1 through 9. And we not saw it one time. And that's where I'm like, I mean, let's be real here. We know Gale Force, they're the best in North America right now. And not one time did you see that? There's blatantly something going on in comms or decision-making. Something didn't add up. That was not them.
Was it maybe that they're still trying to hide strategies? They were like, oh, we'll get Sylvanas on Shrine. She's probably pretty good. And maybe it just wasn't a practice strategy and Space Station just knew what they needed to do versus it?
I do think that's a little bit of the factor here, right? Yeah, it's hiding strategies, which is why you see the Sylvanas. But there is a certain level of like, but that is just what the comp does, you know, and you just have to play to it no matter how high risk reward it is. You're the ones trying to hide it. You're the ones venturing out into the area that is known as the Sylvanas, and you also have to be the one willing to play according to the strengths of it. And it's not the pick, it's more of how it was played that makes me concerned. It's like tempo. Whenever they have maybe a more advantageous early game and fail to play to it, it's not the fact that they're winning the game, it's how they ended up in that case doesn't add up to what it should. And whenever that doesn't exist,